Hello, welcome to Frank's School. I had said that I was going to come clean on what I'm doing here with Resurrection the movie, my imaginary movie. This is the 13th episode that I've devoted to explaining this effort, 79th day of the 5th year. And as a way of coming clean, I need to explain, if you haven't figured it out already, that the Aldea will be restored in the course of the movie. This Aldea do Xisto, the village of Schist, the Aldea Abandonada, the abandoned Aldea will be restored. Largely by this team, which has been assembled of seven characters, but more. There's more to it. But I'm sort of leaving the story for now. The context. Well, this could accurately be called a utopian work, and therefore not realistic, not idealistic. It's in a whole it's a whole genre of utopian literature. I mean, I'll admit to that. This is not going to be that realistic. It could even be called a pastoral or a pastoral. I think there might be an E here sometimes, where there's a genre of literature that idealizes the countryside. Shakespeare's As You Like It is an example of a pastoral. And there's others. I discussed that actually elsewhere in the course. The Faerie Queene, Spenser's Faerie Queene has a part of it that is a pastoral. I even think there's a character in there, a woman that has that name. So yes, it could be called a pastoral. Yes, that's true. So I'll admit to that. Now, the name Zeffirelli keeps coming up, Franco Zeffirelli. I think he's 92 now, because of his work. It comes up much more than I had anticipated, particularly the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. One could almost begin to think that I'm adapting Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, or adapting large parts of it, because there's whole scenes there that they seem like that's what I'm talking about. Just as an example, a church in ruins is built again in the course of the story, is restored. And at one point, there's all these animals in the church. I mean, I didn't intend that, but again and again, I keep seeing the comparisons. This guy, Riz Ortolani, he's the one that wrote the soundtrack, composed the soundtrack. Donovan, the singer, is better known for this, but he did the soundtrack, and the way he interwove the musical themes, the leitmotifs. He died only, I think, 2 years ago, and he did lots and lots of work in Italian, so I should give him some credit. So what he did with music certainly comes to mind, and I'll have more to say about the music, I think, later on, not today. But Zeffirelli's work, absolutely. Mostly in the beauty that he captures in his shots. In Romeo and Juliet, the beautiful filming that he does. Well, anyway, some other movies. Schlafensbruder is a German movie, Sleep's Brother. I put it there because it gives a vision of a village. The Last Village, an English movie, I think it is. It also, these are Alpine. It also gives a view of life in a village. Alpenfeuer, I think it's called, a Swiss movie, dark movie. I mean, there are various movies that show the countryside without the advertising, without the big city stuff that come to mind. Jean de Ferret and its sequel, Manon de Source, wonderfully, beautifully made movies. So they're in my mind as far as the simplicity and the beauty of the work that I would wish are concerned. I mentioned Quest for Fire because I mentioned it because there's very little, or it approaches that wordlessness that I want in this movie. And Missing Link, I already mentioned that. That actually is a wordless movie, except for a small bit of narration. Caveman is whimsical. I mean, it's funny. It's spoofing the whole thing. Has the drummer for the Beatles, Ringo Starr, was in it. Now it's yeah, it plays with the whole. It creates its own language, is what it does. But so it's not really wordless, but I'll mention it. The Madness of King George, I have up here because the score to that, the soundtrack, every note except for certain transitions, was written by George Frederick Handel. So it's a case where there was a lot of attention put to the soundtrack in a different kind of a way. Renaissance Man I put there because of the fact that I found myself thinking of it because there are 8 or so, maybe 9 characters, each one quite distinct. And these characters change over time. I used to teach that. I teach my way through that when I was teaching in public school. And insofar as I've identified these characters, I find myself, and another thing too, at the end of Renaissance Man, the way that movie sort of pulls out all the stops or really tries to pluck the heartstrings with music at the end and tricks. I would do or could, I think, do something like that with Resurrection. All right, now, Our Daily Bread. That is not a famous movie. It's an American movie, black and white. I think the year was 1932. And that right along has been very much in my mind as a comparison to what I'm doing. Our Daily Bread was, as I think I said already, it was not all that well received. But it tells the story of how a group of people try to make it sort of in desperation in the Great Depression. They work together, they farm together. There's great drama as there's a drought. They have a drought that comes. They're going to lose everything. Has a very dramatic ending. I used to use that in school too. The ending of it, just the ending. And I used to also explain how this at the time it was an effort to try to give people hope because things were so bad in the Great Depression, and they would go and watch this movie, and it wasn't that realistic. But they thought, oh yes, there could be hope. I'm wishing for something like that, as I have tried to explain that whether my movie is realistic or not, if it could just give people a vision of hope, I would want that. And then finally, these 3 movies in a row: Robinson Crusoe, which is of course the lone man. Later on with his man Friday, a dog on a desert island. And it spawned Swiss Family Robinson later on, where a family is on a desert island. And then later on, still A Mysterious Island, written by Jules Verne, where a group of men, I think about 5 of them, are on a desert island. And they get the help of Captain Nemo. This is in a way a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Well, that series right there, they're even called the Robinsonades, I think. There's a whole bunch of movies that are like that, sort of about the desert island. But and so in a way what I'm doing is in that genre, is also in that genre, Robinsonade. But it is different. But the thing about it, and I should have underlined this too. I've underlined all these because these are names of books and or movies. Robinson Crusoe now, for the last 200 years, has been enjoyed as a sort of an adventure. But this is something I had taught about earlier, I think. When Daniel Defoe wrote it, that was before the Romantic era had come and gone, or had come and left its mark. This was not a stroke of romanticism. Robinson Crusoe ended up functioning like a myth of the time. This was an enormously popular book back in the early 1800s. Enormously popular. People wanted to believe that. And what it showed, really, not realistic at all, but it showed man conquering nature, using his reason to conquer and then control the nature of this savage island. And people wanted to believe that. That was the myth that they wanted. The Industrial Revolution was coming, and it served them that way. Well, that's what I really want. I want a new myth. I want a new myth, realistic or not, that would show not man conquering nature by any means, but people being reunited with nature and beginning the process of stopping the hurt. I don't know if they can actually do the healing. That's optimistic. But at least stopping the hurt that has been done to the natural world and continues to be done, not only to the natural world, but also to humanity itself. A new myth that people could believe in. All right, I guess I've come clean. Bye for now.